All right, Outlaw Radio Live fans, we are live on the air with none other than the godmother of hip hop, the one that put many, many legendary individuals on the map. Violet Brown, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great. A little somber today after watching the Kobe memorial, but I'm ready for this. I'm ready to go in a different direction right now and feel a little better about today.
I hear. I watched a little bit of it as well, and once it got to Kobe's wife, I had to turn it off. It was too
Yeah.
sad for me.
Yes.
But I want to ask you, when did you get your start in the music industry?
Well, I actually started as a kid at the Rhodium Swap Meet, selling 4 and 8 track tapes. I used to. I've always collected music, and when I was about 12 years old, my parents, they used to go out to the Rhodium. They used to sell stuff out there, but I was always hanging out at the booth that sold music. So I went up to the people there, and I asked them if I could possibly work for them, and they said, hey, we don't really, hire kids or whatever. And I said, I'll do anything you need. They said, okay, well, we need people just to help us, load up and unpack and things like that. Yeah, we'll take you. And they took me on for $20 a day on the weekend. And they saw that I was able to actually sell the tapes because I knew the music, because I'd always collected it. I knew all the latest songs and all that. So they started paying a little bit more attention to me because I was able to actually talk to the customers and sell them, music that they would come up and sing the words to, what is this or whatever, and I would be able to pick it out for them. So eventually they started having me come to their house during the weekdays to help them make the tapes. And back then, these were like mixtape compilations. Only before the whole mixtape scene, you could sell compilations. There wasn't problems with copyrights back then. This was like in the late 60s, early 70s. And so, rules were very different. At least that's what they told a 12-year-old kid, And so I'm out there selling these tapes, and they started asking me, what should we put on these compilations that we're selling? And they were selling to all kinds of swap meet people across the country. So I was telling them what to put on the tapes, all the hot stuff, and they would say, okay, let's give it a try. And these things started selling like crazy. And so I think in order not to have to pay me a little bit more money, they started juicing me a bit by putting my name on the tape. So it'd say Violet 1, Violet 2, and all that. And these things were selling like really strong. So when I was 15, I had already worked for them almost 3 years at this point. And they had a little store in Lawndale, California. And they said, hey, if you want to take over our store, you can just pay us at the end of the week for whatever you sell. I was in high school. I was kind of popular in high school because I always brought all my records to the dances. I played in bands in high school. I was part of drama and all that. So I knew everybody in the school. So everybody started shopping at my store, and it really took off. So I would, go to school during the day, come to the store in the evening, do my thing, and on the weekends at the store. And eventually I was able, and I don't know how I did this, but I talked my mom into letting me drop out of high school just to do the store. And the store was making a lot of money, so she agreed to it. She told me I could do that. I regret that because I had to go back later and finish through, get my GED, and then go back to school, and get a little bit more education later. But I was doing really well at my store. So that's basically where I started. When I was around 18, it became illegal to sell those types of tapes. So I went to work for a music chain called Wallach's Music City, which was kind of like the Tower Records of its time. It was before Tower actually had taken off so strongly. Wallich's was a chain that had been around for years. The Beatles used to shop in the store. They would shut down the store for all these big celebrities for their store in Hollywood, and I was in the one in Torrance. So that kind of started my whole thing, working at record stores and chains and that sort of thing.
And I remember,
and then it just kind of took off.
And I remember when I ended up interviewing Tony A. the Wizard a few months back, and he was giving you a lot of praise, saying that if it wasn't for, people like yourself, you wouldn't, a lot of these individuals wouldn't even be heard of, because you actually used to buy their CDs, put them in the record shops and whatnot.
Yeah, well, I always felt that everybody wanted to sit on our shelves. They wanted their music in our stores because we had a very good reputation, especially when it came to hip-hop. Because I was working in music before hip-hop, so when hip-hop finally hit, when rap came out, I just lost my mind and went crazy. I was also DJing at that time. I DJed for about 26 years through a lot of different genres of music, different types of clubs, different types of people. And so I always felt that if somebody took the time to create music, that there was always some place that we could sell it. So I had stores all across the United States, and I might have had a guy from Fresno or Sacramento or something that was putting out a record, and I knew that, hey, this guy, he has family, he has friends in his hometown, let's put some records there and see what would happen. So I pretty much let everyone have a shot at being in a top record retail store by letting them, put their music in. And I might have put it only in their hometown at that time, but we would try to help them create some excitement. And as things as it would start to move across the country or across the state, we could always add it into stores, moving it along like that. So I was known as a person who would give a guy a shot, definitely. And if you didn't have distribution, I would help you find an independent distributor. Or if you were super great and possibly major label material, I would drop it on some label because I was dealing with every record label. So, I was able to tell labels about certain artists, and help them to land meetings and that sort of thing with A&R people.
And when you said you had your foot in the door with a lot of record labels as well, you were also an A&R consultant at Priority Records. So I have to ask you, how did you and Priority get connected?
Well, the owner of Priority Records, one of the owners, Mark Cerami, was a friend of mine, and he used to come in, and visit our chain, come up and talk to the owner of Warehouse Music at the time, and they weren't really known for rap music when they started. Their big record was the California Raisins. I heard it through the grapevine, which was a strange thing to be on Priority when you think about what they ended up with all the hip-hop. But that's what they first had. So Mark and I became friends, and Mark would always kind of tell me what he had planned what he was bringing out, or, he would ask my opinion on things. And so that's how I kind of became close with Mark. He, when NWA was coming out, they were a little nervous about that in the beginning, and he had talked to me about that as well. And I said, man, this is a no-brainer. I already knew about them anyway, because at that point, they were involved at the Rhodium Swap Meet, and they were involved with Tony A. and Steve Yano, and I knew them from there because I was back at the Rhodium years later and buying some of my 12-inch singles for the clubs I was DJing at from Steve Yano. So I had met, some of them through there, and that's how I kind of got more involved with Priority Records, actually, just talking to Mark more about NWA in the beginning. But what I did for NWA, what I did for Priority Records is I basically put out a record through them called In the Beginning There Was Rap. I had a concept for a record, and I brought it to them, and they were very interested in it, and they decided to put it out. So I did that through them, and some of the other record labels that I was on the payroll as a consultant was Interscope Records, was Hollywood Records, and Hollywood Records is actually where High C and Tony A got their deal, and that was also, I brought that over there to them. So, and then I was with Interscope Records basically because of the Black Eyed Peas, I think, because I was very instrumental in talking to Will about signing with Interscope, because he had a couple deals on the table. He was asking me what I thought of the labels that were after him, and I just kind of helped guide him to make that decision with Interscope, which was a fantastic decision for them to make, because Jimmy Iovine really stood beside them, through thick and thin. In the beginning, they weren't selling like crazy, but a lot of people knew that it would happen for them, and when it did, it was like wildfire.
Most definitely. And Violet, so the next question I have is, when you brought up the California raisins, actually, this kind of ties into what I'm going to ask you, because I actually heard about the California Suns becoming gold on Priority through this movie. You actually had the chance of being on set of the Straight Outta Compton movie. I have to ask you, what was that experience like, and actually reliving all this stuff you've seen through a movie?
Well, I got a call, and when you do a movie, you have to have every single bit of it exact. And so they wanted scenes from record stores and that sort of thing to look exact from back in the day. So they called me and they said, we want you to consult us on what posters should be up in a store if we do that scene, what records should be on the end cap for that period of time, end cap meaning displays in the store, that sort of thing. So, I sent them a list of everything that I felt should have been like on the walls, should have been on the displays, that sort of thing. And so for that, I was invited down to the set, and I got to hang out for a while and see some of the scenes being shot. And it was just... it was surreal, because back in the day, I used to go to those video shoots that NWA used to do, the real shoots, and would be there for a day with them in the park or wherever they were shooting at the time. And so to see it come to life in the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, where they were shooting a lot of these big scenes, it was I couldn't believe it, that I had lived that and was able to see this movie come out. It was just a surreal experience, Dre was on set, Cube was on set, Ren, Yella. It was great to be down there and kind of hanging with those guys during that, for sure.
And one thing I want to ask, because as everybody knows, like, you've known NWA personally. What was EazyE like in real life, like behind the cameras? The media portrayed him as such a terrible individual, but the real fans know that he was such an amazing person. I have to ask you, what is one of your favorite EazyE stories between you and him?
Well, here's a great story. It was going to be Derek's, I think, his first birthday, which was Eric's baby at the time, the youngest, and it was Derek, and it was going to be his birthday. So they actually had a birthday party for him at a Chuck E. Cheese, and it was in Lakewood, California, and we were invited down to Chuck E. Cheese. So you go into a Chuck E. Cheese, and if you can imagine walking in the door of this kid place, where all these kid birthday parties normally happen, you look over at a table, and there sits like Dre and EazyE and Ice Cube and, you know, all these Jerry Heller and all these people connected to NWA and a Chuck E. Cheese there to celebrate Derek's birthday. I mean, it just seems so weird, you know, like that actually happened. And to think about something like that happening today, you know, it's just, that was like a great time. And then also we went to Disneyland for one of the other kids' birthdays. And we're walking through Disneyland, and EazyE had his camera, his video camera with him. We're walking along, and pretty soon people start to notice that EazyE's in Disneyland, and a couple of kids started following us. And then a little bit later, maybe there's 20 kids following us, then 50 kids. Then he's like the Pied Piper walking through Disneyland, and all these kids are following us, taking pictures, you know, of him taking his kids on the rides. And Eric would always let people stop him, and he would talk to everyone, sign autographs, take pictures. But that particular day, since he had his video camera, he was saying, okay, well, I'll let you take my picture if I can take your picture, if I can get you on my video. And so he was like letting all these kids get on his video and signing Disney T-shirts and all that stuff. And I remember when we left there, a couple days later, he said that somebody had broken into his van and his camera was in there. So somebody actually got that video that he did that day from Disneyland. But Eric, you know, he was walking around, and in Disneyland they have those Keystone Cops, you know, walking around like the old school or the old police or whatever. And so I looked over and I said, Eric, I go, why don't you take a picture with this guy? And he goes, why do I want to get a picture with him? And I go, just take a picture with him. And so he goes over and he takes a picture with him. And then he goes, okay, I got the picture, now what? And I said, okay, well, that's going to be your new F the police picture, you know? Like, I don't know what I can say on this show.
Oh, actually, it's uncensored, so you can say anything you like.
Okay, so I said, that's your fuck the police picture now. So I got that picture of him and this Keystone Cop who didn't even know who Eric was. You know, he was an old man or whatever. And it was just a really cool picture. So a lot of people have always asked me if they could use that picture for different things that they were writing when they were writing about Eric. But he used to pay for, like, if he would hear somebody got shot or killed around the neighborhood, he would pay for the funerals behind the scenes. He would always give money to people. I mean, he was just a really generous guy. That's the way I knew him.
I agree with that, because I've had, like, before I started doing my radio show, I've been such a huge fan of NWA. And I always grew up by saying to myself, never believe the media. And you could tell Eric was such a great guy. I had the privilege of interviewing Cocaine, and when you said, you know, paying for people's, you know, funerals and whatnot, Cocaine, I think it was Cocaine, he's told this story on the show. Cocaine's daughter, son or daughter was sick, and Eric actually paid the medical bills, and I think he skipped the tour just to go out there and actually, like, help Cocaine out.
Oh, yeah, and I know that he had paid, well, I heard that he had paid for a lot of the stuff, you know, when the DOC was in his accident, you know, and all that. But, yeah, he was always, like, just so giving to people, you know, like, he loved kids. So if there were any kids around, he would enjoy talking more with kids than the adults, you know. He would be telling stories, playing with them, you know, just, asking them, you know, what they're into, that sort of thing. He just really loved kids.
And you also recently worked for Strange Music. I have to ask you, what exactly did you do there, and what was it like working for Tech Nine's label?
Well, I had known Tech probably since, well, before Angelic came out. They had a demo of it, and they came by my office to see me. They wanted me to hear that particular record. And I remember that I was in a meeting or something. And so they dropped by and they left the CD for me to hear. And so I already knew a little bit about Tech because I had heard him on the Wake Up Show or something, freestyling one time. And so I thought he was amazing, and I called into the show at that point to talk to him. And I had never really called in to talk to anybody, but he kind of blew my mind, you know. So I called in, and he remembered that, and of course I remembered him, but they brought that album to my office, and I was able to listen to it after my meeting was over, but they were gone. The CD was just there, you know, but I had their phone number. So I called them up, and I said, whoa, I go, this album is amazing. What the hell? Wow. I can't believe it. So, and that was the Angelic album, and so they were supposed to be leaving town, and they decided to stick around, so they came back to my office. I think it was the next day they came back, and we were able to sit and talk about the whole album and all that. And so that's where my relationship really started with Tech. And so I was always real excited with anything that he would put out, and I would make sure that my stores were loaded up. I would make sure that in the Midwest, this thing was stocked like a Tupac record, because over there in the Midwest, basically, he walks through town like Tupac. I mean, he's like super famous, you know? And so I had this relationship going with them. And then when Warehouse was finally bought by another company, which was Transworld Entertainment, they owned the FYE chain, I went to work for them for a while. And I finally left there because they wanted me to go to Albany, New York, to work out of that office, which I was never going to leave the West Coast. So I started working for Strange Music. And what I was doing with them was just a little bit of everything. It was VP of label development. So basically, whatever they needed me to do, if they needed me to make some special calls for them, connections, that sort of thing, I was there. I was working on album credits, working with the artists to get them to, do certain things when they needed them to do it, things like that. So I was with them for a few years. And, I'm always tight with Travis O'Gwen. I think he's one of the greatest businessmen out there. He's amazing. They run that label it's pristine in there. It's super clean. The people that work there, are all happy. The record label's doing extremely well. The touring, like Tech will do like 100 shows, and I think one time he did 100 shows in 111 days. He's constantly touring, and they're constantly making music, even when they're out on the road. And so, Travis, he just really knows his stuff. He was a businessman before Strange Music, and he was a fan of Tech Nine and decided, hey, let's just do this label ourselves. And so that's what they did, and they've been highly successful. It's a great independent hip-hop label, highly successful.
Oh, Mo, and I agree with you on that. Tech Nine is such an amazing talent. When I first heard a Tech Nine song, it actually blew me out of the water. I was like, this guy is hip hop. Like, you know what I mean? This guy is hip hop.
Yeah. And, I used to say that he's kind of like the rapper's rapper. Like, rappers bow down to him, especially after they see him live. A lot of people, they don't hear Tech because he's not on the radio. He's not making pop hits and things like that. Occasionally he'll get a song that has traction on the radio. But his shows are sellouts everywhere across the country. There's never a show that's not completely sold out. He's always got meet and greets where people get there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to meet him. They've really got something good going over there at Strange Music. And, they've got their hands in other things too. They're always like, venturing into other businesses. They've got their own company that makes their merch. Merch is big with Strange Music. I don't know if you've been to a show, but their merch area is usually huge, like gigantic area, and everybody that goes to the show usually buys something. So, they decided, well, let's just do our own merch. And so he bought a company. Now that company is making merch for all different, making gear for all other types of businesses, sporting teams, all of that. They got their studios that they opened in right next to the Strange Music corporate office, and it's top of the line. It's a top of the line studio where people go in there and they go, "Oh my God, I can't believe this studio is here." I mean, it's just so state of the art, But everything they touch, anything they use, they buy. It's not like he's renting tour buses and doing all this. No, they own all that stuff. They're really good with making good choices about business. Due to Travis, he's a business genius. Actually, he's such a great mentor for me to work under at Strange Music, because I was learning things from him that, even after being in the business so long, I was learning things from Travis. He's just amazing.
And I also saw a memory that you shared on your Facebook, a picture of you with Eminem. I have to ask you, what was it like meeting Eminem? Like, what is he like as a person?
Well, when a new artist would put out their first record, they would often bring them to my office. So nearly everybody through the years made a stop into our corporate office to meet me. And Interscope brought in M, and I already knew something about him, and I already knew that he was great, but I didn't know exactly. I mean, nobody knew to what extent this would end up with, just multi-millions, diamond status releases, from the guy. But he came into the office. He was super cool. I told him that he reminded me a lot of another artist that was signed by Eric over at Compton Records, part of Ruthless back in the day. And I said, it was this female named Terry B. I said she was amazing and kind of ahead of her time, and I said she was very clever, like you are, and all that. And then he went on to say, wow, he goes, I can't believe you're saying her. He goes, I think she's fantastic. She's amazing. He just kept going on about her, wanted her phone number because he said, oh, we should connect sometime or something, So I ended up giving her phone number to him. I don't know whatever happened with that. But he was just really like down-to-earth guy at that point, and every time that I've been around him through the years, he's always been pretty much the same guy, even at the height of the career. When I saw him again, he was still just, a normal guy. At one point, I got a call from Interscope Records, and they said, hey, how would you like to be on an album that's going to sell probably maybe like 5-6 million records? And I said, oh yeah, that's fine. So I thought that they were talking about maybe putting my name in the thank yous or something. I didn't realize it was in the Steve Berman skit on the Marshall Mathers LP, but it was actually in that skit where he mentioned me by name. So when I got the copy of it and listened to it, I was just completely blown away, and then of course that record sold way beyond 5 or 6 million. I don't know how many hundreds of millions it's at now or whatever, but it was just great, like being a part and watching somebody like him, explode in the way he did in the music industry.
I have to say, you just made me go way, way back with that one. I did not actually put two and two together. I did not. I remember the skit you're talking about, and now I'm picturing in my head Steve Berman actually saying your name, and it's just like mind blowing. That CD used to be on repeat all the time back in the day when I was younger.
Yeah, a lot of people would say, you're always listening to the songs, but you're not paying a lot of close attention unless you're a true hip-hop head. You're not paying a lot of attention to the skits. So even now, even though with all these years later, every once in a while I'll get a call and go, "Oh my God, I just heard your name on an Eminem skit." To this day, people still say that. So that was like really a big deal for me. It was really an honor being involved in such an important album.
Most definitely,
and then later on, I'm sorry, I was gonna say later on after that, Prince put my name in a song, and so that was just another mind-blowing situation.
And what I was saying was actually like Eminem, like that album really did define a generation as well. That really did form his career, that album.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I also saw that you actually met Will Smith, and personally, he's one of my favorite actors. And I have to ask you, what was it like meeting Will Smith?
Well, I met Will again when he came to my office. It was him, Jazzy Jeff, and him. Came to the office, and we went out to lunch. Jive Records brought them. And I remember going to a lunch, and the two of them, they were real young, and they were joking around all the time, laughing, funny sort of guys. And I remember the one thing that stood out from the lunch is they ordered iced tea, and then they take the sugar and they start pouring sugar into the iced tea, and I was looking at them going, when are they going to stop? That's a lot of sugar or whatever, and you could actually see in the bottom of the glass that it was like building up like a lot of sugar, maybe like an inch or two of sugar, in this glass. And I was like, what the heck? And so, but I just watched, I didn't say nothing. And then they took a spoon and they started swirling it around, like it was a hurricane in the glass or something, and then they go, oh yeah, okay, this is just right. And then they like drank it down real fast, like all that sugar. And I was like, Jesus Christ, I'd never seen that before, So I said, man, you guys better be careful with all that sugar, And they go, oh, that's the way we like it. We like our sweet tea really sweet. And I was like, okay. But he was really a fun guy, really nice guy, very personable I remember he had great manners, just super nice, and you could tell that something big was going to happen with him. He had a lot of ambition for sure.
And also, so last year, actually, you were on an episode of Common Knowledge on the Game Show Network. I have to ask you, what was that like, and how did it come to be on the Game Show Network?
Oh, gosh. So weird. Okay, a friend of mine that I met, he needed somebody, because it's like a trivia game show, and so he said, a lot of trivia. He goes, why don't you come with us on this game show? And I didn't even know exactly what it was, when I went down there. So I told him, yeah, I'll do that. And then I remember they introduced us and they said, these people have seen over 1,000 concerts between the three of them. And I was thinking to myself, I probably saw 1,000 shows in, a little over a year, because I used to go to things every single night as a buyer. I would go to things, whether it would be hip-hop or even gospel shows I would have to go to sometimes, all different types of genres. And plus, I enjoy music from all different genres. So I would end up, I might go to some great rock show with the rock buyer. So I've been going to concerts ever since I was a really small child. So I have seen just hundreds of thousands probably of shows, so I thought that was kind of weird, our introduction. And, but it was cool. I didn't make a big deal about it because I wasn't exactly sure what the show was about and how, how well we would do on there.
Well, I would say if they asked you any music questions, you most definitely probably nailed those questions.
They didn't really ask any music questions at all. It was mainly like stuff like just common knowledge questions around the house, like what would you clean this with, or what would you, just, it was, I think it's called Common Knowledge, the show. And so it was more questions like that.
Oh, okay. But I have to. This is one of the last questions I have for you, Violet. I just wanted to ask, what's next for you? Like, are you still going to be doing anything in the music industry, or what's next for you?
Well, I get hit up all the time, and I'm always interested in hearing new music. And if I hear something that makes sense and I can help somebody get to a certain person, I'll still help them with it. I'm working now with a new label that's going to be up and running this year, and we have our first showcase happening. I think it's going to be May or June. We'll have our first big showcase, and this label is going to be involved with all types of genres. Some things are going to be a little bit different for me. Some of the genres, but they're things that I do enjoy. So, that's all happening. I wish I could drop a little bit more about the name and the people that are involved, but I can't do any of that yet until we make the formal announcement about the label. But I'm telling you, there are some big people involved in this, some really legendary people from the music industry that are involved. And the artists too, and the producers and the songwriters are just amazing, top notch, unbelievable. So I'm looking forward to that. And then also I manage a gym in Signal Hill, California, because the fitness bug got me, and I started working out a lot a few years ago, which brought me into a whole new world in the gym, and I started helping the gym that I was going to, and I've basically been there with them for the last few years, doing that as well. And that's No Limits Sports and Fitness in Signal Hill, California. It's about a 16,000-foot gym. It has Spartan training and all different types of things going on in this gym, and I'm just loving that too. So
sounds like a super gym.
I'm doing stuff on the side, and then doing the gym, and trying to help people whenever I can with music and consultation if you need it, that sort of thing. And then this new label that's going to be happening this year. So I'm staying busy.
And that's the best way to be, stay busy. And I have to ask, Val, this is the time in the interview that I give a chance for the individual that comes on the show, just a chance to give shout-outs to whomever they want to give shout-outs to, and also your social media handles. That way our listeners can follow you if they're not already doing so.
Okay, it's The Violet Brown, and that's on Instagram and Twitter. I haven't been paying a lot of attention to my Instagram like I should, but I'm starting to pay more attention to it. I'm on Facebook too. I'm under The Violet Brown on a public page, and then I have my personal page as well. And, I want to give a shout out to Strange Music, because I love all my people over at Strange Music. I want to give a shout out to Carla Maciel, my partner, and also to Madeline and Eileen Randolph. I'm going to be doing some things with them soon. These are brilliant ladies. And then to No Limit Sports and Fitness in Signal Hill, California. And to, all the artists that I'm talking to now that have been sending me new music, hopefully I'll be able to talk more about some of those people soon too, maybe at our new label when it happens. So, just thank you guys for letting me be on the show today, and that's about it.
You are most certainly welcome, Violet. You are the godmother in hip hop. It would be an absolute crime for my platform not to have Violet Brown on the show, because my goal is to help preserve hip hop culture, and you can't preserve hip hop culture without the godmother of hip hop.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And, keep hitting me up if you have new music, if you're an artist, or if you're somebody that's trying to do your own little label or whatever, hit me up. Maybe I can help you.
Most definitely. Thank you so much, Violet, for coming on Outlaw Radio Live. You have yourself a wonderful day.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye, you guys. Bye.